about all the people that are a part of Raider Nation, which I'm the head of Canada for Raider Nation. I want to make sure that we're all going to put our money in. And if he doesn't go to the Raiderland, we're going to give the money back. But if he does go, we'll kick in.
I mean, hey, you do what you can to pay that guy big money for 3 years because
3 years.
You got to at least have a chance with him, where you don't have a chance with Derek Carr.
You do not. No,
even John Gruden can win another Super Bowl if Aaron Rodgers is there.
You can't with Carr. You can't.
You can't do it.
No, sorry. The Raiders that have been on the show, Eric Harris, our buddy.
Hey, he's a Falcon now.
He's a Falcon now, and I'm going to watch him now because he's just a great guy
too.
But Eric's a good dude, and we want him. We wish him the best. We wish him the best.
Yeah, I just the NFL this year is crazy. There's another whole game that they're going to play this year. A lot of people are pissed about that for some reason. I don't get it. I'm all for that. What I don't want is Thursday night games. I hate Thursday night games. I hate it. I want to watch football on Sunday and Monday and the occasional Saturday. That's it. I don't want to watch it on Thursday night.
I watch it on Thursdays. I like to cut in the action.
But they show the worst games, and I know they're trying to show not marquee matchups, but still, it's no desire for me to watch that.
No, none.
And those stupid jerseys they wear. Come on now.
Oh, I know, that's crazy, man. I don't know what they're doing.
The Rangers, New York Rangers, not the Texas Rangers, New York Rangers, fire their GM and their coach. Over the comment that Tom Wilson should be, or it was despicable for Peros not to suspend this guy. And again, they have a point, but to get fired. Now, granted, they didn't make the playoffs, and everyone thought they should make the. I thought they should. I thought they should have made the playoffs.
Me too.
I thought they should have beat the Islanders out, and it was a tough division because you have some big teams there. But again, that being said, I think more of it was around this thing. Now, Tom Wilson, he gets fined $5,000, which is a drop in it's nothing for even the lowest paid NHLer.
Yeah,
and he gets no games. And this, not only that, this guy is a repeat offender. This guy's done stuff like this constantly, multiple times. And again, I get it. You're protecting your goalie, blah 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 blah. But there's no consistency in the NHL in terms of who gets what and when you get fined and when you get suspended. And it's ridiculous.
Are you surprised when they put George Peros in charge that he's been hit in the head more times than anybody? So he's the one making.
I don't get that either. I don't get why he's there. He was one of the dirtiest guys there was.
Yeah, I don't get it either. So
great news, everybody, is that this episode sponsored by Crystal Glass. Crystal Glass, call 310 Glass
for all your glass needs. Yeah, man.
There it is.
Yeah.
All my windshields, all Nikki's windshields are always everywhere. Crystal Glass. I'm gonna build a new shower in my bathroom in my new house. Got a new house. New house. Gonna build a nice new shower in there. Gonna call up Crystal Glass. Gonna get some nice glass surround in that shower. It's gonna look nice. Can't
magnificent.
Wait for that. Yeah. So they're a new sponsor on the Me and Jesse podcast. Pretty cool.
Yeah. Awesome.
And, hey, that's pretty good too.
Yes.
Also, have you been keeping up with the F1 there, Mark?
I have, and my team Mercedes. Listen.
I mean, come on now. You come in new this year, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna pick the best team there is.
That's not true, Jesse. You know that's not true. That's a lie right there. I said right from the beginning after I watched the thing, I drive that type of car, okay, and I have for a very long time. So what would I be going with? Ferrari? No. Maybe. I don't even know who the best is or nothing. I said, well, I'm going to support my guys because I drive that kind of car. So I'm going to go with Mercedes. Then you tell me, you think I'm one of these NFL guys that go, oh, I'm going to be a New England Patriot. No, that's not me, buddy. But in F1, I drive Mercedes. So I'm going with Mercedes. I would go with no other team. And it happens to be that I have the big pimp as the number one driver in the world as, Lewis Hamilton.
Yeah, Louis Hamilton is unreal. The guy and the whole team proved it again yesterday.
Yeah.
With come from behind win. It's crazy when you look at the thing. The lead driver is 30 seconds ahead, and they throw in a pit stop, throw on new tires, and lap by lap he catches a second and a half.
Yeah, that's driving.
And
that's driving.
Pass them, and you're like, wow, that is incredible.
Correct.
We have a great guest on tonight. Someone that Mark hasn't talked to in like 14 years or something, or known for 14, hasn't talked to in quite a while.
Yeah.
Jason
No.
McDonald.
Yes.
When we come back, we'll be joined by Jason and lots more of you. Stay tuned. This is the Me and Jesse podcast.
Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavlich and Jesse Martineau. Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavlich and Jesse Martineau. Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavlich and Jesse Martineau. Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavlich and Jesse Martineau. Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast with Mark Pavlich and Jesse Martineau. Get ready. It's time for the Me and Jesse podcast.
Well, we're joined by the one and only, the athlete.
Gosh, what happened there? What was going on?
I don't know. We don't know. First time that's ever happened. Welcome to the show, everybody. Jason McDonald.
Happy to be here. Great to see you, old buddy.
Yeah, you too, man. You too. You look the same, though. You don't look a day older.
So I say the exact same thing about you.
Well, I have good lighting and makeup on right now, so that's why probably.
Lots of
I get
cosmetic
good
surgery.
lighting, but no makeup. Are you guys together or is separate locations?
Separate locations.
Yeah.
Yeah, separate locations.
Well, thanks for joining us tonight, Jason. I people don't realize you were the first Albertan in the UFC. What does that mean to you now, today, looking back at that?
Oh man, every time I think back to MMA, it's nothing but fond memories for me. So, like, I don't, I had an up and down career. You win some, you lose some. That's fighting. But when I think back about fighting, it's all about great friendships, great memories. Sure, you win some, you lose some, but I got nothing but fond memories. So, and be the first guy in Alberta to kind of make it onto the scene from, this side of the country it was super cool. It was super cool.
Now, the next part is that the guy sitting here with us and you have a long history of. Now, go back.
There would be no history if it wasn't for him.
How? Okay, well, talk about that. How did you guys meet?
Oh man, I was trying to think this through the other day, and I think the first time that Mark and I met, I walked into your gym.
No, Penhold. Penhold.
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry. We met in Penhold. I was fighting on a small, little, just local card, and Mark and I met super briefly. Yeah. And it was just, a very brief introduction. And then I followed that up. I just popped into your place one Saturday afternoon, a couple of weeks or a month after that. The original Maximum Gym.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And now you fought with the MFC before the UFC.
Yeah, like I said, that's 100%. There would have been no UFC for me. Mark, gave me a ton of opportunities to showcase myself and my hard work, and without those opportunities, I would have never have got recognized.
Wow. So Mark played a pretty decent role in that.
That's only a small part of it, and then beyond that, it morphed into a friendship. Became a manager, became my coach, and we had a hell of a ride.
We did. Jesse, when he fought in the MFC, literally half of Red Deer came to Edmonton. I'm not even making that up. And I used to tell everybody, they wrote in the newspaper one day, they said, the MFC has the sexiest audience in sport. And I said, you know why? Because all Jason's friends, they're all buff dudes. Their girlfriends all look good. And literally 500, 600 people would come from Red Deer every fight. No joke.
So you had
but those MFCs were so good. They were so fun, so exciting. They were so good for the fight. So good for the MMA in Canada. But so good for MMA in Western Canada. But then just Canada wide, and then it just it grew and grew from there.
And I remember watching on TV. I never actually got to see one live, but everything I hear was actually quite incredible of a show.
Well, I'm sure you know Mark well enough that he doesn't do anything half-assed. So.
That's for nice sure.
Now, I'm curious, Jason, out of your 4 children, which one has your athletic ability out of the 4? Who has the best athletic ability out of the 4?
Oh man, all 4 of my children are pretty rock solid athletes. But
who's the best out of the 4?
He's got to put them on the spot now.
There's one that has to stand out just a titch more than the rest.
Well, my youngest daughter too is probably the grittiest out of the four. Like just gritty, and we'll suck it up and tough it out. And as you know, you and I had many training sessions where you would try to break me, and I would just refuse to let it happen.
Yeah.
She's definitely
that's what I want to ask was how much did he break your balls during training?
Oh, that's awful.
Oh man, I don't think it was. I never ever looked at it like breaking my balls. Yeah. It was. He challenged me. He challenged me to do more than I thought I was capable of.
Right.
And it's hard when you get older. At the time, you just get pissed off. At the time, I was young, and I would just get pissed off, just get angry because it'd be like, you said, whatever, 2 more rounds. It's been 5 more rounds, or whatever. At the time, you would just get pissed off. Looking back now, I appreciate what was actually happening there. Right? It was just making me believe in myself and making getting more out of me than I probably thought I had to give.
Well, and that's a big thing too. But in terms of today and back then, coaching styles changed a lot over the years, and now today it almost seems a little more coddly than back in the day when a good swift kick in the ass seemed to do the trick for a lot of cases. So how do you, being younger then, take that and not just say "F you, I'm out of here"?
Well, I think the fight game, there's not much coddling going on in the fight game. Let's be very honest. I mean, the sport in itself breeds that you either eat or be eaten, and I mean, Mark taught me that. He would throw me in there in the basement at Panthers against these boxers that they just thought I was, on the menu. I was just some
on the menu.
and eventually I was. Originally I was just easy pickings for them, but eventually I would get a round in here, a shot in there.
Right.
Eventually I earned their respect. And there'd be days where I'd walk out of there and be like, I didn't get my ass kicked tonight this morning. I actually maybe got a piece of them. So, the coaching, I think, it wasn't like, I'm a lack of words. It wasn't like busting your balls. But like I said, it was always putting you in a situation where you had to rise up and be better.
Right.
So you, even today, Jesse, for example, very few people in the MMA world spar with professional boxers. They have professional boxers hold pads for them, but they don't spar professional boxers. Jason was one of the first that ever did that. And let me explain this to you. The first time we went into Panthers and he was sparring professional boxers, he says, "Mark, I don't need any headgear. Don't give me no headgear. I don't need no headgear." And I said, "Jay, I go, Jay, you need headgear. You need headgear with these guys, okay? Like for real. Like these guys are not." And they know that he's Jason McDonald from the UFC, right?
Yeah.
So but if they wanted to MMA fight, he would beat them in 30 seconds. You know what I mean? But he would say, "Okay, I'm going to do your sport with you. We're going to box." And so after the first round, I remember like yesterday, he was sparring, and this guy was like 10-0 heavyweight boxer. And Jay's into the first round, and he comes back and he says, "Where's that headgear? Where's that headgear?" Like, because these guys didn't care. Like they didn't care that he was Jason McDonald.
Well, it almost even put in the thing like, "Hey, he's from the UFC. We're gonna tune him up and see what happens here." But
the problem is that Jason has this thing where he comes across real nice and he's really sweet to people. But then the people that were like putting it on him the first time, second, about the fourth and fifth, sixth time, they were like, "Hey, bro, why don't we slow it down a little bit?" Like to Jason, right? So what I'm trying to say is that's why I was asking about which child had that like you, Jay, because that's something you're born with. I don't think you could be taught that ever. I think it's inside of you somewhere. Maybe in all of us, it's inside us. It's just how that comes out. And it's like, you did have that in you. It didn't matter. Like you just bit down and you said, "Okay, like this is what I'm doing today. And we're going to do it." Like that's how it was.
And then I agree. That's how training was for us. That's how it was every day. Every day was like that for us.
You trained every day.
And Sorry.
Did you train every day?
We train, we train 6 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah, you understand, like I was driving down to Red Deer sometimes with like wrestlers in the back seat of my car. My poor wife would be driving. I'd be working in the passenger seat on my phone, and I'd look in the back, and there's 3 guys with cauliflower ears sitting in my back seat. You know what I mean? Like that's how it was, you know. And so Jason didn't wrestle with MMA fighters. He wrestled with wrestlers. He boxed with boxers. Not with, like, it was almost comical after a while. Like if he would box with a MMA fighter, it was like a joke. Like, well, you understand, like
how people would want to train, wouldn't they?
No, because it hurts. It hurts, Jesse. It hurts. Like when you box with boxers, it's a different story. But you see, even George St. Pierre, one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time, he never boxed with boxers. He had them holding pads for him, but he never was sitting in a ring actually boxing with like pro boxers. Never. He even told me. He said they would hold the pads, but he wouldn't box with them.
Wow.
But George did it right, man. George, if we talk about George, you brought George's name up, and this made me think, like, George is one of the guys that was smart enough to walk away.
Correct.
When everyone, your memory of George St. Pierre in the ring is George was a great fighter. And I mean, it made me think of watching Donald Cerrone the other night. I don't watch a lot of fighting anymore, but
you don't.
When the old timers come on, I'm like, hey, I want to see this. And you're watching a guy that's just a shadow of what he used to be.
Correct.
And you're like, man, why didn't you retire 5 fights ago? You're just like, please retire. And a lot of the greats did that. You know, Anderson did it.
Yeah.
Liddell did it. Couture probably held on for a couple too many.
Yeah.
Cerrone's held on. And your memory of these guys, although they were amazing and great at one time, your memory of these guys is what they used to be, and that they got their ass kicked in their last 4 or 5 fights. And then George was smart. He walked away. Everybody was like, why is George walking away? Because he walked away when he was great, and everybody will have that memory of him.
What do you feel, which side of that do you feel you were on?
Definitely on I could have walked away 2 fights sooner. But I mean, when I mentioned some of those names, those guys were fighting purely out of the love of fighting because they didn't need the money. Those guys were set up and wealthy at that point in the career. Chuck Liddell's and the Anderson Silva's and George St. Pierre's and Donald Cerrone's. For me, I was holding on because I was transitioning into. I was searching, and what am I going to do next? So I was hanging on and fighting for a paycheck. At that point, my love for fighting had gone. I just didn't, I don't want to say I didn't want to fight anymore, but early in my career, I'd jump out of bed and it'd be like, man, let's get this, let's do this.
Yeah.
And by the end of the last couple of fights, I'd open my eyes in the morning and be like, how many days is it to the fight? I just got to get there and get this behind me.
Actually, I remember Mark and I went to a Mike Tyson. He talked and he said the very similar thing that you just said, is that the last few fights, like, he didn't want to fight anymore. It wasn't that he didn't still like it. It's just there was something missing.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter what you do, and it's whatever you do, whatever you're passionate about, whatever you love. At a certain point, if you're doing it, if that's your hustle and you're doing it, you get wore down, you get beat down, and it starts to become a job. Mark, you talk about the MFC. At some point, it became, you weren't as passionate about it, I'm guessing, as you were when you originally started.
Yeah, because I just looked at my family. Like, at the last show, we were sold out and we barely made money. And I thought, what a weird thing. We're sold out and we're barely making money anymore. And because the payroll was going up, great, you have all these TV deals, you have all the stuff, but what comes with all that stuff, right? Expectations. They had expectations of me to do, hey, your lights need to be better. That costs money. Your fights need to be better. That costs money. And then we're sold out and I'm like, we barely made any money. I looked at my wife the last show and I seen her look so tired. And I said, that's a wrap, man. I'm done. I could do anything in life. And I said, I'm not going to go poor for the MMA business ever, right? Because I was one of the people that started this whole thing. I said, I'm not going to end up broke, with a tin cup in front of me for the MMA business. I'll figure out something else to do in life. And that's what happened. But it's weird because in the fighting business, it's hard for someone like the fighter. I was talking to Jolena. Jolena was on our show the other day, right? And it's the same thing with Jolena. Like people are saying, she's had 54 fights. Maybe she should stop. But it's not me to tell Jolena to stop or you to tell her to stop. It's the fighter to tell themselves to. They won't. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, the closest people next to you can say stop. But it's like, no, it's different with fighters. Because she said too,
it's like they're the last one to know.
Last one to know.
But they still have the.
Well, and I mean, I agree 100% with what you said, Mark. I was very similar for me. Toward the end, you're fighting for peanuts.
Yeah.
I had a bad injury. A bad injury busted my ankle and put me, prior to busting my ankle, I was doing really well. And I was picking up some bonuses here and there, making some money, hustling, putting money away in Mark, that's some term I stole from Mark, in the hole. I was putting some money in the hole.
That's right, put in the hole, man.
And things were good. We moved into a new home, and then I bust my ankle. And I watched all these savings that I had hustled for and worked hard for just dwindle away because I'm sitting on the sidelines for a year with a busted ankle. Then I come back, I had a few fights. I'm making average, just, I don't want to say barely getting by money, but if you make 20 to fight and 20 to win, and you don't win, you make 20 grand. Then you got to pay a percentage to the tax man, got to pay a percentage to your manager. And then all of a sudden you look at, just like Mark's saying, you look at the payday and you're like, man, I'm tired, I'm haggard, and this is what I made. Like it becomes a point where you're like, it's not really worth it for me anymore. And I can go, just like Mark said, I can go do a million other things. I can put this same drive and passion and work ethic into something else and be much more successful than to get my head beat in for $12,000.
But do you think that, Jason? Do you think that that's what it is now when people say, your passion was MFC, Mark, or MMA? I said, listen, guys, I love those things, but that's not my passion. You know what I mean? Like, my passion is like succeeding. It doesn't matter what, if you said, we're going to sell bathtubs tomorrow, right? And we're going to make really cool bathtubs. And me and three of us are going to be in business together and we sell 10 million bathtubs. You want to see how excited I'm going to be by being in the bathtub business? Like, I don't get it. What I mean by that too is I go home, I look at my family, everybody's happy. You guys are happy. Everybody's, that feeling. I said, that's not what it is. Like, yeah, you like watching NFL football. You like watching boxing, MMA. I had it in my life. It's funny. People come to my house. They can't see one piece of paraphernalia about the MMA business in my entire house.
It's hidden.
What? No, where is it? There's nothing.
No, you hide it in the back room.
And people, what someone said to me the other day, they go, what are the things that you have from the MFC? And I said, you know what I have? I have one of the championship belts, and I have one pair of Jason McDonald shorts. And you know where they both are? They're in my storage room, even the belt, the MFC belt is in the storage room next to Jason McDonald shorts. And I said, I don't have anything displayed. No one even know. You wouldn't even know I was ever even in the MMA business. You would have no clue.
I agree. I agree with Mark. I have one single pair of trunks that's framed with one of my gloves from that Toronto fight, the big one at the Sky Dome. And it's downstairs, tucked away in the room downstairs. It's not, you'd walk in and you'd never see any remnant of mixed martial. And I also agree with Mark that fighting at that time was that was my challenge. But I agreed. I just like to work hard at something and be successful in it, whether it's running a gym, whether it's fighting, whether it's being a good friend, whatever it is, just happened at that time. It was fighting. I was I was in fighting early enough that I had the opportunity to become, fairly successful in Canada. doing
Because
it.
you were a high level volleyball player as well. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, I played volleyball at university, and
cool. Yeah.
you know, I think it's fair to say that anything that I've done, be through hard work and just the desire to be successful, I've been fairly successful at. I haven't crashed and burned and, you know, too badly at anything.
Is your mindset CrossFit now? Like just CrossFit?
No, not well. No. I mean, for a while it was. I've kind of reached the pinnacle of like my job, like my gym. I think we've been open 12 years now, so that's fairly successful as far as a CrossFit affiliate goes, to be a 12-year affiliate. And then as my job on seminar staff working for CrossFit, I'm in a what's called a flow master role, like a mentor. So I've worked my way as high as I can kind of go there. And although I'm still very passionate about it and I really enjoy it, it's no, I wouldn't say my world revolves around CrossFit.
Gotcha. Would you have competed? Would you have competed if you were younger? Like, I know that one time you did kind of compete, like accidentally they called you in or whatever to compete. But would you have competed against the best of the best? Because that's something guaranteed that you would have excelled at immensely. But would you have went in those CrossFit games and actually competed at a younger age?
Yeah, 100%. I wish 100%. I wish I'd have found CrossFit at 16 when I found just, you know, fitness in general.
Yeah.
When you look at the pictures, I mean, your nickname was the athlete, and the pic. I was like, I didn't know anybody could look like that.
Yeah. Jesse's like, is that real?
It's like, how much Photoshop did they do on this before?
Zero.
Like, no, that was it. And so obviously that was always a part of your regiment. I mean, you were an athlete before you were a fighter. So what was it that you just decided, I want to be like this?
I mean, I graduated from college and I had played team sports my entire life up until that point. And then you're like, what now? You know, you're twiddling your thumbs and you're like, what do I do now? I have this desire to work hard and be successful. Where do I put that energy?
Right.
And the honest truth is that I watched the UFC, the early UFCs on our bus trips when we would go to volleyball tournaments.
Oh, cool! Wow, on VHS.
And then I used to say, man, I'm going to give that a try. And the guys, my teammates laughed. They would laugh at me. They're like, yeah, sure you are. And then I read Ken Shamrock's book, Inside the Lion's Den, and realized that, hey, this is really a thing you can do. Like, you can go try out for this team and make this team and train with other guys who want to do this. And so that's what I did. Jumped in the truck, drove down to San Francisco and tried out for Frank Shamrock's fighting team.
Yeah.
Now, Mark, you had a Frank Shamrock connection too.
Yeah. Well, I went and trained with Frank right after he beat Tito. And then when I was on the beach with him, like, I thought I was obsessed at that time with MMA, and I'm not even on, like, nowhere on the planet of Frank Shamrock. Like, he couldn't talk about anything else but MMA, like, or wrestling or boxing,
like
or
combat sports is.
That's it. There was not that the sky was blue, the beach was not. No, we're not talking about that. We're just doing this. And when I'm not joking, so we're at the wrestling club one day, and he starts talking about this guy named Jason McDonald. And I said, what? Oh, Jason McDonald, is he from Canada? And he goes, yeah, the guy was crazy. He's such a great athlete. What an athlete. And Frank must have said the word athlete 47 times that day about Jason. So that's where the nickname actually came from. Am I right, Jason? It was basically he got stuck saying the word athlete, Frank Shamrock. And when I met Jason for the first time, I said, hey, I went to train with Frank Shamrock, and this guy couldn't stop talking about you, man. It was nonstop. And then that's how the nickname came about. But it was Frank Shamrock one day in Hermosa Beach, California, must have said it 147 times, and that's how it stuck, you know?
Yeah, and that was our connection. That's why we started chatting that night at that fight card in Penholds.
And I found out how athletic how unathletic I was when I went to go train with Frank, because he's like I moved well, but athletic wise, I wasn't like what he was doing. Like he was on a whole nother planet. I think me personally too, like Frank, you see him later on in life when he was fighting like Nick Diaz and things like that. But when you saw him fighting Tito in his prime, that's the Frank Shamrock you should remember, because when you're talking prime, like no one ever talks about him. UFC never talks about Frank Shamrock, and because they don't like him. But let me explain this to you. Prime, he was one of the best of all time. And end of story. Like people can say whatever they want. But when he fought Tito in his prime and Frank was in his prime, and he just beat him senseless, right? And he beat him with athleticism, and he beat him with conditioning, and he beat him with technique. But you don't hear anybody ever talk about Frank Shamrock anymore. His name never comes up.
And he was so far ahead of everybody then.
He was
so well-rounded back then at a time when nobody was well-rounded.
That's right.
Everybody was a one-dimensional fighter. Right. This guy was such a well-rounded fighter and had such an arsenal. And Mark's hit the nail on the head. Is people don't give him the credit that he deserves. You never.
It's awful. Awful.
And it's because they don't like him. This kid, to where, later in his career, he became a bit of a loudmouth, and not even a loudmouth. He just would say, he would just call it the way it was.
Right. Telling the truth.
And unfortunately, that doesn't work sometimes.
Sometimes people don't like that.
Yeah.
Now we had Short Fuse, Ed Herman on the show.
Yeah, we did. And he was so mad, Jay. He's like, Mark, you should have trained me, man. That wasn't cool. And I was like, but it was funny because he was a great guest. But can you imagine? He's still fighting in the UFC, this guy.
So here's the prime example of what I was talking about, that I was transitioning in my last couple of fights. I was trying to just find a future beyond MMA, and here's what happens when you don't have a future beyond MMA. You're Ed Herman.
Yeah.
You're still fighting MMA 20 years later. Like, I don't know. And I didn't listen, but you guys tell me, did he, what's Ed doing right now?
Well, the crazy part is he has won his last 3 fights. So he went up to 205. He's won his last 3 fights. Yeah. But what happens then now, that prolongs it, right? Like, because you maybe should say, listen, you know what's funny? I found out firsthand. We had a boxing club together with about 5 of us that would box every Thursday at 2:30. Okay. Jesse was part of that boxing club. Some other guys, Eddie was. I was doing it up to 50 years old, 50. Okay. So I'm 53. And one day Minot says, people are calling, and Minot says, he's not going anymore. And I said, what do you mean? I got my ribs broken, not by Eddie, not by anybody that was even like high level, but I got my ribs broken because I was being very relaxed with somebody and I didn't want to like light them up too much. And then what happened is I got cracked, and then I come home and my poor wife's like, okay, you're 51 years old and you're not to spar anymore, and their guys are calling. And then we said, okay, we went to Panthers gym. 10 guys showed up. I sparred all 10 guys one last time. Right. and then it was a wrap. By the end, I didn't want to spar ever again. I was like, I'm done. And I walked out because my mind was telling me to double jab, come across with the hook, but that wasn't what was happening. Like my mind was working great. It was like, yeah, Mark, but it was slow. I would watch it on video and I'm like, oh my God, it's so slow. And then I'm like, it's time to stop, because I was getting hurt by people that should never hurt me. You know what I mean? So that's something in the fighting world that you wish that people would figure out sooner. But the great Muhammad Ali didn't even figure it out sooner, so. And
that's exactly it. Your mind is great. You want to still be great, and you want the storybook ending, and you want it all, to walk off into the sunset. But you're slow and sloppy. No, I don't even want to say sloppy. You're slow. You can't take punches the way you used to be able to take punches, and it just you get old, man. You get old. So Ed is Still grinding?
Still going.
He's still fighting, and it was weird because he knew our story, like he knew me and your story. So it was weird to interview Ed, and he was like, I remember seeing you and Jason riding in a golf cart after you guys beat me, and you guys were drinking and you were having fun. And I was like, wow, this is bad, man. And I was like, but I always liked Ed, and like that whole crew of guys, and the late his trainer. You remember, like there was Ed Herman at that time. It was Robert Follis. Ralph took his own life, which I loved. Robert. He was one of the few people when I got there. He was one of the few people that was like, hey, like everybody else didn't want to talk to me, but then he was the guy that was like, hey, I know who you are. You're from Canada. And, he was just a great person. And it's shitty what happened. Like he took his own life. But that whole crew of Chris Lieben and, so, and you imagine like to start out in the UFC and your first two fights are against those guys. And they didn't want you to win. They wanted you to do okay. And then when you finally did win those first two fights, the UFC fell in love with you. They did. They're like, oh, this guy with red hair from Canada. Holy shit, he actually like beat these guys, and he wasn't supposed to.
You have a famous line though, Jason. When you beat him, what was that famous line?
Everybody knows. It was the truth. It wasn't like a scripted thing. It's exactly what Mark said. Is leading into that fight, Mark would say this to me over and over again. They don't want you to win.
No.
They don't want you to win. You go in there and prove it wrong. They don't want you to win. And that was the truth. They wanted to give Ed a fight that was not a cakewalk, that would be legitimate enough that, people wouldn't just say, hey, he just fought a bum. So.
That's right.
And they just picked the wrong guy. And the famous line, of course, is I wasn't going to be anybody's stepping stone, but that was the truth. It was, they brought me in there to be a stepping stone for Herman. And they did it again against Lieben. It was the exact same situation against Lieben. Dana White had already said the winner of the Lieben fight was going to go on to fight Franklin. Yeah. And they're like, well, we got to give him somebody good enough that it's not a gimme, but we got to give him someone that he's going to beat up.
That's right.
And once again, it was the wrong guy. They picked the wrong guy on the wrong nights. And I beat Lieben, and it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't, they picked the wrong guy. It was a bad choice.
Which is your most memorable fight in the UFC, or maybe anywhere?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Well, I would say the Lieben fight for sure is the most the first one has to be the most memorable.
But the best one.
Yeah, the one that you like the most.
You have to say what I'm thinking right now. The best one. Listen, Jay, I cried when both my children were born. I cried. One tear went down my eye one time when I got married to my wife. And the fourth time I cried is when you did this. You imagine in my lifetime, 4 times I cried. I can count 4 times. When you knocked out Joe Doerksen in Montreal, Canada, I started crying like a baby. I couldn't stand that guy. And when you beat him in Winnipeg was fantastic. That was pre-UFC. That was fantastic. We went into his hometown. Jay beat him. And then we went to the UFC, and they thought it was a fluke. And they kept talking. It was a fluke. It's a fluke now. We're in the UFC together. And there we were on stage. And Joe was ready to fight me, not even Jason, because I'd been shit-talking this guy forever because I'm sick of him. And Jason knocked him out, and it was fantastic. We got the bonus money. We got the money on top. It was crazy, man. But it was in Montreal. Yeah. It was in Montreal. But to me, that was the one. Like, the Lieben fight was it was a big fight. But the Joe Doerksen one was just consistently beaking off about how it was a fluke. And I told him, Joe, it wasn't a fluke. This time it's going to hurt worse. And it's great when you can shoot your mouth off. And, and Jason
deliver.
Backs it up. And Jason backs it up. I didn't deliver. Right?
Well, and not many times. There's not many times in your career you fight. Believe it or not, there's not many times where you fight someone where you don't like them.
Yeah, right. That's
like,
true. Yeah.
Prior to, I can think of the majority of my fights I had zero interaction with those people prior to the fight. The fight is just the sport. The sport is fighting. It's violent, sure, but that's the sport. And once the fight's over, you shake hands and it's done. But just like Mark said, we fought Doerksen, and they wanted us to fight them for the title in their hometown. Once again, they picked the wrong guy. We went into their city, and not only did I beat Joe, I beat the shit out of Joe in his hometown.
Yeah,
I caught him very badly in the first round, like a gash on his forehead. And I continued to beat him for 3 or 4 rounds, and then I choked him out. He's a jiu-jitsu black belt.
Wow.
And I choked him out in front of the hometown crowd.
Yeah. And we mean hometown. We mean like hometown hostile.
Yeah, hostile hometown.
Hostile.
And they, and for months and months after, for years after.
Years.
Joe and Monteruca would go on and say that I wasn't in the same caliber as him. The only reason I beat him was because of the cut. And I'm like, well, sure, the cut played a big part in the fight, but how do you think you got the cut?
Yeah, you still got to get it.
Like, it's like you didn't fall on the way into the octagon and hit your head. And this went on for years and years. Just like belittling me. And I believe this to be true, was that Joe took a short notice fight for Joe Silva. Joe Doerksen he needed a fight filled, and he took a short notice fight for Joe Silva. And he asked that what he got in return for doing this was he wanted a rematch with me.
That's what he wanted.
That's what he wanted. He wanted a rematch with me and in the UFC. So fast forward to the UFC in Montreal. Here's a rematch. After years of talking shit about me, here's our chance in front of 25,000 people to make it right. And and then I ended up knocking him out. and
that was awesome.
And like Mark said, it was a great night. I mean, beyond winning the bonus, beyond all of that, it was just, there was so much animosity and dislike between all of us. Like, our entire camp, their entire camp, there was just so much disrespect and anger. And it was great. That was the storybook ending to that.
Yeah. And it was in Montreal, right? So we had so many people from Edmonton, Red Deer, Montreal. Like, you'd walk down St. Catherine Street and you'd see half of Edmonton and Red Deer walking down the street. Like when Jason fought, people came. Like I'm not even joking. When I said 500, 600, 700 people came from Red Deer, that's a true story. And you know what? It was literally like, you remember the Bay City Rollers back in the day? Everybody got in the bus and went. That's how it was. That's how it was in Montreal. I would walk down the street in Montreal and people would be coming up to me from Red Deer going, "Hey, Mark, how you doing?" I'm like, where are we right now? Like, it's just like half of Edmonton and Red Deer are on St. Catherine Street. It was crazy.
Crazy. So that was obviously, and then I don't know, most disappointing. If I were to think back, like I said, I don't think much about the disappointing fights. Like, don't dwell on that shit. But I think one of the biggest disappointments for me, for sure, would be losing the MFT title fight to Cote. I know people would think I would say the UFC. No, I think.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We had invested so much, over the years of fighting and fighting the best guys in Canada at the time. We were, and we had a bit of a rivalry against the guys in the East, and we knocked off a couple of those guys.
Yep.
And then there was no title fight up until that point. There was no title up until that point. Correct me if I'm wrong, right?
Mark? No, there was none.
And Cote and I fought a 5-rounder for the only title at the time, and I lost. And it was Yeah, I sat in the upstairs. It was funny. You said a tear in your eye.
Yeah.
I sat there in the locker room and cried for probably 15 minutes after
Yeah,
that.
I was, you know, and I don't know if you remember, but I whispered in your ear and said, "We're going to the UFC no matter what." So I said, I don't care, because that was the first day. Like, you were always a sport fighter, but that was the first day you were ever in a real fight, in my opinion, right? So that was a fight. That wasn't a sport fight. That
was no joke.
No, he's still not a joke.
Yeah.
Patrick Cote is a fight. So, and you can't hate Patrick Cote. Patrick Cote is a class guy. So now you're fighting just raw fighting. There's no, we don't like him, he don't like us. I'm in the corner of Jason, and Stefan Patry, he doesn't know anything about fighting. He's a promoter. He's in Patrick Cote's corner. And after round one, he looks at me and I'm like, I told you, and then after round two, we're doing good again. I'm like, it's going to come. And I thought we were going to win by submission. And by the fifth round, because it was a real street fight, that's what happened. It didn't matter who was better at jiu-jitsu. It didn't matter who was better at stand-up fighting. When you're in the fifth round and you beat the hell out of each other, he ended up winning. He ended up winning by submission. And I remember it was super emotional for you, but we were upstairs at the Shaw Conference Center. I whispered in your ear and I said, we're going to go to the UFC no matter what, because this is the day you had to fight. You were a fighter today. You weren't an MMA fighter. This was a street fight. This was like down, up, clinch, everything. Like you had to bring it all. And if you didn't bring it all, and you know what's funny? Patrick Cote went to the UFC right after that fight. So what did Jason do? 3-4 fights, boom, he was in the UFC. That's what happened. So it wasn't.
And Cote and I ended up training together numerous times after that. Numerous times.
In Montreal.
Yeah, in Montreal.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome.
So, another example of, like, there's no hate there, right? Like, Doerksen was the only guy that I hated. And we were all compensated due to his wants and his big mouth, So that was pretty funny. But what do you see yourself now, Jay? Do you see yourself? So you're doing the CrossFit. You have the gym. We want everybody to know about your gym in Red Deer, right? I mean, are you closed right now during COVID? Yeah, of course. Yeah, COVID. We've had obviously a tough year because of COVID. And everyone's had a tough year.
Yeah.
So, but specifically gyms have been targeted, and it's been a rough year for us. So yeah, the gym is currently closed. My job with CrossFit, up until COVID, I would travel 40 weekends a year teaching seminars for the company of CrossFit, and which was a good job for me. It paid well. I got to travel. I did something I was passionate about. I never really felt like a job, and all that's been put on hold this past year. Like, officially, my life has been, it's like I'm, living in a time warp right now. Everything in my life's been put on hold. My gym's closed. My job is, as long as gyms are closed, my job doesn't exist. I'm just kind of in this really weird holding pattern right now.
Which is horrible for you, right? Mentally.
Horrible, because everybody that knows me knows, you know, that I'm busy being busy all the time.
Yeah.
And Mark used to hate that. He used to hate that when I fought. He used to hate, like, man, can you just go home and do nothing?
Yeah.
But he knows that I was constantly busy just being busy. Yeah. So for me, this has been a complete nightmare. Like, I just find myself really just a loss of things to do. And I find myself, try to be positive and know that we're going to come out of the other side of this. But man, I said that 6 months ago, then I said that 8 months ago, then I said that 10 months ago. I'm still sitting here saying that. You're like, when's it going to end?
Yeah, I'm not like, I don't think, for me personally, I haven't said much of my opinion on like the COVID stuff, but it's interesting how the Canelo fight had 73,000 people at the fight the other day. And my son Dave, who you know very well, is getting married in October in Vancouver, and he can have 15 people at the wedding. And I'm like, wait a second. Okay, I'm okay with wearing masks. Okay, I'm okay. Wear a mask, social distance, but everything has to be open. Like, you cannot close down. You cannot close down gyms. You can, like, people don't understand. Jesse and I did a podcast for a very long time about mental illness, and you can forget about being broke. You can forget about everything. But if you go check the suicide in Alberta right now and the rest of Canada, it is off overdoses. It is off the charts. So I'm looking at people that they're supposed to be in the smart role of the world, and I'm thinking to myself, I don't know, like I'm not one of those smart people, but it's like a common sense thing, and I'm like,
they ran a campaign well, is how they got there.
Well, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know this. People say, well, okay, you want to do the mask thing? I agree. Do the mask thing. You want to do social distancing? I agree. But you don't shut down businesses. You do not.
Especially places like gyms where it is,
correct. Wear a mask.
Health, it's health, but physical health, but also mental health for many, many people. So
correct.
It's a big outlet for a lot of people, and to not have that is absolutely ridiculous in my mind.
Well, it's
ridiculous. I'm with you guys where, hey, you want me to wear a mask? You want me to socially do? Hey, you want me to go get vaccinated? I don't think I need it, but I'll do it.
Yeah. Yep.
I did it. Yep. But it's like, how can you shut down gyms and activities when you're leaving the mall open? You can still go to Leaf Lemon.
It's insane.
There's still 500 people in Costco. Yeah.
Yeah. You can go to Costco, but you can also go to the outbreak list, and you can see that Costco's on the outbreak list and Walmart, and you're like, well, I don't see a single gym though, or a single sports team or kids activity on the outbreak list or whatever.
I don't know why the vaccine people don't get smart and say, listen, okay, if you told all your members, if you get vaccine tomorrow and you wear a mask, you could come back and train, everybody would go get a vaccine tomorrow. They would.
75% of my gym is vaccinated because they wanted to keep coming to the gym.
Correct. And that's what I don't understand.
I don't get it either. I don't understand.
Yeah. Because I see so many people struggling right now financially, and I think to myself, that's going to be the next thing, because I've always said in life, I'd rather be dead than broke, right? So, so thank God I'm not in that position, but I'm saying I can imagine a lot of people that are suffering during this time. Like I'm like, I clearly see what you could do to fix this. I'm not one of those smart people, but I think, wow, wear a mask, get a vaccine, get back to training. End of story, because, and you know what, Jay, I'd have a hard time being a gym owner and in being shut down, because like that, what I just said about being poor, I'm telling you, it's something that I could not stomach, and I would have to figure out some kind of online courses. I'd go out to a field to teach people. I don't know what it would be. I would figure because
we've done every imaginable. We developed 4 business plans in the last 12 months
to show them.
We've developed in the past 12 years.
Wow.
Every month or every couple of weeks, you're developing a new business plan in response to new restrictions that they put on you. Well, Meanwhile, Lululemon and the mall is still operating with a ball of hand sanitizer at their door.
Yeah. That's nuts, man. That's nuts.
Well, you're like, who? And as you said, I'm not the smartest guy in the world, man. I'm the grinder. I'm not the brains of the business. I'm the muscle and the grinder. But who's making the decisions? Who's steering the ship? Because I'm not that smart, and I can clearly see that we're not on the right path.
No, because they say, okay, restaurants are closed, wear a mask, but the numbers are going up, right? So because you got Costco open and Walmart open, and they're not really regulating how many people are walking inside, not really, and so there's a problem right there, right? So I'm not saying to close Costco, and I'm not saying to close Walmart either, but I am saying is you have to monitor how many people are in a place. So if your gym is X amount of square feet, you should be allowed X amount of people inside your gym with a mask. And here's a great thing. You're vaccinated too. Fantastic. That's what we're going to do. And listen, I know it sucks and you might not want to get a vaccine, but if you want to play ball, hey, I had to get a vaccine to go to Mexico. I didn't know what the hell they were shooting in my arm, but they said now they need a vaccine. But if I want to go to Mexico, I had to get this thing. And I was like, okay, shoot it. I don't give a shit. I want to go to Mexico. And it should be the same thing with the gym. If you want to come in, wear a mask, get vaccinated, whatever it takes to get money back in the gym owners' pockets, do it.
Tell me something. Did you get to Caesars last summer? I know you got your yearly trip to Caesars.
You know what? I was in Mexico with Minot, and all of a sudden we were there like a year ago before the pandemic, and we were hearing people talking in Mexico. Minot and I were there for 2 weeks, and we were hearing people talking about toilet paper. And I said, what the hell is everybody talking about toilet paper for? And Minot was like, who cares, honey? Let's go to dinner. Like, I was like, I don't care either, right? we're on the plane coming back from Mexico, and people are like freaking out. Like, this is it. This is the day the pandemic started, you know? And so
Zombieland.
So Minot and I went for 2 weeks quarantine before there was even a quarantine. We thought that's what we'll do as responsible adults. We'll quarantine ourselves. And Minot's probably the funnest person in the world to quarantine with. So I said, this is only a good thing for me. So I was like, great, we'll quarantine.
Quarantine's right? All naturally anyway.
Yeah. So I was like, this is fantastic. I love this. But what I don't love is business owners being crucified. And that's what's happening right now. And this is the first time I ever talked about it out loud, Jesse. You know that.
I know. I
don't talk about it on social media. But I don't like to see my friends in trouble. And I think it's disgusting on all levels because, hey, first of all, this is a time right now where if you're gonna do anything in your life, be healthy. Be healthy, because you're not going to die from smoking cigarettes. You're not going to die from cancer. You might die from the coronavirus, but if you're healthy, you're not going to die from it. That's a fact. So if you're healthy and your immune system is, but let's go by their stats, right? Yeah, because if you're healthy, so if you're eating incorrectly, if you're smoking, if you're doing whatever, you should stop all that shit now, because that's going to help. Being healthy, this is the time in your life where healthy is going to be key. So let's close down gyms. Like, it makes no sense.
No sense.
No sense.
Well,
thank God thousands of people watch this show, and we're going to make sure they understand that, you know, save the gyms. I see Lee Meehan doing the same thing. I mean, he's so mad, and I agree with him. Like, this is not, you know, first of all, people are suffering mentally, but then on top of it now, you're killing them financially, and that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing.
Makes no sense.
Jason McDonald, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. And you know, Mark was saying, hey, I haven't talked to this guy in a long time, and we spent every day together for number of years.
Yeah,
years and years. It's been way too long.
There was a section of my life. There was a section, there was a chunk, but a section of my life where all it was in my mind was angles for him when he would fight. So it was always in my head. Like, that's all I thought about. Like, I was thinking of angles, and I was thinking of training, and I was thinking about how we were going to win. And that's all I did. And I loved it. So don't ever think for 1 second I didn't love it. I loved it.
Likewise.
I did. I tell everybody, I said, when you can say in your life you cried 4 times, and one of the time is when you knocked out Joe Doerksen, that's insane. My children, that's how profound that is. So my children being born, marrying my wife, and when Jason McDonald knocked out Joe Doerksen, you imagine how insane that is? But that's a fact. That's a fact.
Jason McDonald,
gentlemen,
thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you guys.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for coming on the show, Jay. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Right.
Let's not make it so long for next time.
100% we won't.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Good night. There he is.
That was too fast. That went by way too fast. That went by way too fast for me, man. So,
well, this episode has been brought to you by Crystal Glass. 310 Glass for all your glass needs, whether it's showers to windshields to when Johnny puts the baseball through the window. Call 310 Glass.
And can we just say this out loud, because I saw some people talking on the internet recently about Crystal Glass because of certain things.
Right.
And let me explain this to you. This is a company that's been in business 70 years. 70 plus years. Let me also tell you this too. The owner of the company, Mr. Ed Bean, okay, 92, 3 years old, okay? What he's done for the city of Edmonton, not just for the city of Edmonton, but he has stores throughout Vancouver, BC, Kelowna, Alberta.
He saved your beloved Oilers.
He sure did. That's a
fact. Single-handedly.
let's not forget this too about Crystal Glass. And my brother from another mother, Ken Franchuk, the GM of the company. Let's not forget this too, eh? They'll never say it, but I'm allowed to say it about their philanthropy, what they do for not just for the city of Edmonton.
That's right.
But for charities around Alberta, Saskatchewan, throughout Canada. What they do is literally that almost makes me emotional because I've seen them do it.
Yeah.
Okay. They are a company that donates so much money to charity and they never talk about it. You go on their social media, you go on their stuff. It never is brought up, but on the Me and Jesse podcast, it's brought up because it's time to know. Like when I heard people the other day, because of certain things, I was like, wow, this is Crystal Glass, man. This is like I'm trying to tell you, this is like in Canada, this is like the Nike. This is like, this is
one
like,
especially in Edmonton, this is one of the Edmontonian staples.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
On my street,
it's so funny because, I've seen a lot lately about, we talk so big about supporting local, and then you get people online saying that, oh, it was busy and I couldn't get a seat at this restaurant.
Yeah.
And you're like, and they leave a 1-star review on something. And but they'll go to McDonald's 52 times and they'll screw up their order 52 times.
Yeah.
And they won't say shit. And it's absolutely ridiculous that people are like that, and they turn so quickly on their own. When you have people that employ people from the area, when they invest in the area, when they support and reach out and grow a business to bring attention back to where they started, it's incredible that people can still say stuff.
It's offensive on all levels, okay? Because Crystal Glass supports the Me and Jesse podcast, but the Crystal Glass supports not just the Me and Jesse podcast. They support so many other things, and that's what people have to understand. That's who I support all the time. It's funny. You drive down my street, you don't see if someone. We live on the golf course, so people are getting their windows broken all the time, right? So like literally all the time. And the only truck you ever see on my street is Crystal Glass trucks. I had that discussion with all my neighbors.
Yes.
I said, listen,
hey, support local.
And
these
it's
guys
funny.
are from here.
And they're such a big company. You go,
no, they're big, but
but they are local.
Yes.
They're local. They support everything in BC. They support everything in Saskatchewan. In Kelowna, they support the Kelowna Rockets. In this place, they support these people. It's unbelievable what they do. So I know it's a shout out to them today. They are a sponsor of our show, but sometimes we don't go into detail to that level.
Absolutely.
And don't forget, we have that huge boxing card coming up in June.
Yes, we sure do. The Santoro brothers.
Woo! And I'm telling you, it's on Fight TV, everybody. And I need you to tune in because these two guys, okay, must see TV.
Yes.
Must see TV.
And hey, you watch the Canelo fight. Like, I mean, hey, obviously Canelo is a different thing, but one thing we've discovered is that combat sports really do well on this kind of platform. It is awesome.
Yes.
And so you can get this. It's a pay-per-view. It's only $20 though, so it's not a $70 hit with UFC.
Correct.
Which, you never know if you're going to get anything good. This is actually going to be good, and believe it or not, Mark and I are going to be involved in this. So that'll be fun too. Yeah. Get used to hearing our voices on there.
And did you see the Canelo fight? And I called it. Did you know that I called the 8th round?
Yeah,
so,
you did.
So I called. It's over. And listen to me, people at home that watch the Me and Jesse podcast on a religious basis, which you should. Nobody knows more about fighting than I do. End of story. You just don't. You don't. You think you know. You think you know. You think you know, but you don't. Right? And I said to everybody at home, I said, Canelo in 8. And people are like, oh my God, Mark's crazy. Saunders, he's never lost. And I'm like, yeah, he's never fought anybody.
Yeah.
So
no, Canelo, what I saw anyway, it looked like Canelo dominated.
He did. He dominated, right?
He controlled him the entire time.
Good, Jesse. That's right. He controlled him. It's funny because the announcers weren't calling it like that, but then it was weird how when they showed the scorecards after the 8 rounds, the judges sure seen it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, well, no, he directed him to this place. He pushed him into this spot. He led him over here, and he looked like he was toying with him. And again, I think, maybe he could have put him down or put it over earlier, but make a statement.
Hey, and I'm digging the headphone chair thing
yeah,
there.
it's nice and matches.
Very nice, very nice, very sharp. Hey, do you know who's on the show next week?
Yes, I do. Pete
And
Spratt.
Pete, the secret weapon Spratt, everybody.
Secret
I'm telling you, he's a gem, man. He's awesome. And he'll be on the show next week. 7-8-time UFC vet, also fought in the MFC. But the great part about Pete Spratt is big win he had against Robbie Lawler back in the day.
Awesome.
By leg kicks. I mean, it was fantastic. But Pete is a good friend of mine, and he doesn't do a ton of interviews, but he is a cherished treasure of the MMA world, and he'll be on our show next week.
Well, tune in, everybody, to next week when we have Pete Spratt on the show. Thank you so much, Jason McDonald, for joining us this week. And you know, it was a family reunion because Mark and him went so far.
I feel
back
great.
and-
I feel great right now, and I'm telling you, it was way overdue, and I really do. I loved it, and like I said, it went by way too fast for my liking. So.
Yeah, we have to give him a call again. Well, everybody, thanks for watching. That's Mark Pavlich. I'm Jesse Martineau, and this has been the Me and Jesse podcast, the most exciting 60 minutes you spent on the internet this week. We'll see you next time when we're joined by Pete Spratt on the Me and Jesse podcast. See you next time, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Me and Jesse podcast. Follow us at facebook.com/Me and Jesse.